Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Netflix documentary, The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. So, for those of you who don't know who Marsha is, like myself, before I watched this documentary, um, the significance of Marsha P. Johnson was her role in the Stonewall Uprising, her advocacy with the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries or STAR program, and her death and legacy that are still relevant today. Some of the key points from the film are the LGBTQ plus rights movement was kicked off by the Stonewall Uprising, to which Marsha played a significant role in resisting police brutality. The Stonewall Uprising was really the first time that members of this community banded together, stood up, and fought back against the violence of the police and the criminalization of their group. Marsha fiercely advocated for the rights of homeless transgendered youth through the STAR program. Now, Marsha was often homeless herself and described herself in the film, was described by friends as calling herself a throwaway youth. And they believe that this is what drove her to do such fierce advocacy for this group of people so that no one else, no other youth, no other young person in the transgender community felt like a throwaway, that Marsha was always there for them. Marsha's death in 1992, which was originally ruled a suicide, is a symbol of ongoing violence against the Black transgender women. Um, it still goes on today. Black transgender women are one of the most targeted subsets of this community. And even though her death was initially ruled a suicide, after persistence from friends and fellow advocates, they are investigating or did investigate her death as a possible homicide, which was a victory for the LGBTQ plus community with the police, because often their crimes against this community went uninvestigated and were not treated as other deaths or other crimes would have been treated. Now, if we compare the views and values from a Christian worldview or the values of social work, when we talk about the transgender community, both the Christian worldview and the values of social work align, but they both emphasize human dignity and the inherent worth of all individuals. The Christian call to help the vulnerable aligns with the social work mission of compassionate service. Now, where these values and views conflict is when we talk about social work supporting the autonomy and self-determination of the individual. While the Christian perspective often emphasizes moral guidelines that choose your path or a certain way that you need to behave and kind of rules out that self-determination. Social work supports affirming care for this community, whereas Christian traditionalists struggle with full acceptance. If we look at the comparison chart, we see that in the categories of human dignity, the Christian worldview, we pull a little from Genesis 1:27, how all people have inherent worth. Human dignity is a core value of social work, and in this category, we align. Compassion and service, care for the oppressed, we pull from Matthew 25:40. Advocacy for vulnerable communities, you see in this category, we also align. When it comes to self-determination, faith guides moral decisions, comes from that Christian worldview. Social work values, we value individuals to choose their own path. And in this regard, in this category, those views do conflict. When it comes to LGBTQ plus inclusion, this varies widely between different denominations of the Christian faith. Affirming care is an essential component for this community, and they are fully included. So, in this regard, again, the worldview and the values do conflict. This film was quite impactful on me emotionally. Um, there were times where I was tearful and sad over the loss of Marsha, who was this strong and beloved member of her community. She was always there to lift people up and to love people and to bring some joy and brevity to this community that is so vulnerable and marginalized. I was very angry when the film went on to talk about the continued and ongoing violence and the dehumanization of whole groups of people. LGBTQ plus community is a large community, a large spectrum of different choices and different sexualities and people and how they see themselves. And to dehumanize this whole group of people is very frustrating. And I did have feelings of anger toward that. Um, I also had I was torn a little morally. As a Christian woman, um, we often hear the message that, that homosexuality or transgender lifestyle is sin, that it's a choice that people make. And then, as a humanist myself, I believe that this is biology. For the most part, there are some individuals who may make this choice, but I think for the large majority of members of this community, this is who they are. This is who they were born as. This was not a choice that they made. Um, and I do find peace because I believe very strongly that God made all beings as He intended them to be. And God does not make mistakes. So if God makes someone gay, then that is what they were meant to be. That is the path God chooses them to walk. If God created someone whose mind and perception of who they are doesn't align with the physical body they were born in, well, then that was God's path for them. That is how He intended. And I feel that that should be respected and that we should be caring for all of God's created beings and not picking and choosing, who we include and who we love and who we don't. And we are commanded to love all neighbors as ourselves, and that's for all communities. So, in conclusion, I just want to end with a quote from Martha where she said, or Marsha, excuse me, justice isn't just remembering the past, it's changing the future. And her fight and the fight of those like her throughout the 70s and 80s into the 90s, and even currently today, it goes on. We see more inclusion, we see more acceptance, but the battle isn't over. So her legacy lives on. Violence against transgender individuals continues to be a problem. And so we all need to stand together. We all need to love this community. And we need to make sure that we are advocating for this marginalized group and honoring Marsha's life and legacy. Thank you for joining me tonight and have a good night.